Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I've had a real privilege and a pleasure, and we're going to bring the panel. Come on up and get seats, and I'll introduce you. Had a real privilege and pleasure of working with Salesforce this year to help moderate different women in sales panels around the country. We did one in Boston, we did one in DC, we did one in New York, and now Dreamforce. So it's fantastic. I'm very also fortunate because we have a trio of very successful sales leaders. I'm going to introduce Amy first. You want to take your seat, Amy? Why don't you all sit down, and then I'll introduce each of you. So Amy right here, Amy Appleyard. Amy recently moved into the VP sales role for the identity and access management teams with LogMeIn, a leading provider of cloud-based connectivity, one of Boston's largest cloud software companies. She oversees inside sales professionals who provide remote access, device management, and security for thousands of mid-market and enterprise customers. Prior to that, Amy she led the mid-market sales division for Staples Business Advantage, overseeing both inside and field services teams, about 500 people, right? She won an AAISP Spirit Award for displaying passion for inside sales and enthusiasm and an interest in advancing the profession. Amy's also passionate about women in sales. She's been on one of our panels in the past, and she has a quote that I wanted to share. "In order to succeed, act as if it were impossible to fail." She got that from a fortune cookie, and you still have the fortune cookie, right? Great. To Amy's left, to your right, is Yvonne Valdez. Yvonne is a seasoned high-tech executive who thrives on transformation, innovation, and diversity. She leads the Schneider Electric Global Cloud and Service Provider Sales segment, responsible for delivering top-line profitable growth, customer satisfaction, and the best-in-class account management. Previously, she was with Hewlett-Packard, Enterprise Worldwide Indirect Services Sales. And Yvonne has received a number of awards. A couple are 2016 CRN Power 100, the most powerful women of the channel, and 2015 Top 10 Latina Executive of the Year. Yvonne shared a quote from Tony Robbins for us today. "Leaders spend 5% of their time on the problem and 95% of the time on the solution. Get over it and crush it." I like that. Thanks, Yvonne. Shep Maher. So Shep has a fittingly corporate bio on the GuideSpark website, but for purposes today, I'm going to introduce him this way. Shep has been selling and leading sales teams since 1997. For the first several years of his sales career, Shep thought that to succeed in tech sales, you must play Division III hockey, ice hockey, have a cleft chin, and have a nickname like Sully. At least that's the way we did it in Boston, right, Shep? Over time, Shep has come to realize the power of a diverse sales team and has used diversity as a secret weapon to power high-performing teams at companies large and small. When I asked Shep for a quote, he gave me the Eleanor Roosevelt quote, "People are like tea bags. You never know what they're made of until you stick them in hot water." So please welcome our panel. Can I have a hand for our panel? Thank you. So in an effort to overachieve for you today, instead of giving you 12 tips, we actually have 18 of them. And as you leave today, if you get your badge scanned, we will send this to you in PDF form. 18 ways to diversify your sales team and grow ROI. So we know there are a lot of studies about the value of diversifying a sales team. We're not here to throw around a lot of statistics in that regard. But what we're here to do today is to talk about what happens beyond the talk? Like, how do you actually put things into place? There are a lot of panels like this, a lot of discussions, but what really works in growing your sales team so that it is inclusive, and does it really help, has it helped you grow revenues? So I'm gonna start with a couple of questions, but we're gonna have audience questions. And whoever asks a question first, the first 2 or 3 people, I'm gonna say 3 people, will send you a Starbucks card if you get up first and ask a question. All right, so make sure that I have your email address afterwards, and we'll do that. So please be thinking of a question that would be helpful for this conversation. So Amy, you majored in finance, yet you ended up in sales and as a sales leader. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Yes, definitely. So I actually, my second degree was in finance. My first degree, I'm not sure if you even know this, I was a theater major undergrad. So
Love it.
And then I was going through a career change, went back to school, got a business degree, a degree in finance, and that's how I found my way to Staples. And I started in a finance role, but pretty quickly gravitated toward the sales organization and moved into a role where I ran strategy for the sales org. And this gave me the opportunity to work really closely with the sales teams, in particular the mid-market sales teams. I then also did a little stint in marketing, then came back to the mid-market strategy for the sales group, and then eventually was asked to lead the teams and did that for about 3 years prior to leaving Staples recently to come to LogMeIn.
Great, and tell us a little bit about LogMeIn.
I'm 30 days in.
30 days in, it's jury's out, that's great. No, it's a great company, another one based in our neck of the woods on the East Coast in New England. So let me ask Yvonne, you wanted to make sure that we talked about mentorship and sponsorship. And I think we could fill up a half hour doing that, but give us a little bit of thought on the difference for you and how it impacted your career.
So it impacted my career. So I was early in the days of high tech, I was one of the few women in product marketing. And when I wanted to venture into the area of sales, and to be honest with you, I figured out very early on that there was a salary difference between what I made and what my male colleagues made. And the only place where I could get salary parity was actually in outside sales. I had a male mentor who actually coached me, but he very cleverly said to me, he said, it's not only about mentorship, because a mentor guides you, but you need internal company sponsors. You need people that are going to be behind those closed doors, in those rooms where they're doing the reviews and the high potential. They know you, they know what you're capable of, they know your capacity to grow, to learn, your curiosity, and they advocate for you. And it's a safety net, and it's very different than having a mentor. So what I urge people that I mentor in the workplace, I always ask them, who are your sponsors within the organization and outside the organization? Because these are the people that really know what you're made of and your capabilities.
That's great. Shep, welcome.
Thanks, Lori.
So you spoke last year, very passionate vocal leader about diversifying sales teams, and you continue to do so. And I wonder if you could give a little bit of background. Shep was actually on the panel last year here at Dreamforce that we did. And give us a little background about why it's so important to you.
Sure. So it's something that I've been aware of from an early age. So my background, I was raised in a single parent household, and my mother went back to school and graduated from college, ended up graduating from law school in her 40s, and ended up going into the working world. She worked for a prominent mutual fund company in Boston, which will remain unnamed. And it was interesting from the workplace and have stories of what I would call very subtle sort of male orientation, okay? And that's stuff like the temperature in the office. The temperature in the office at a financial services firm is usually set for guys like me wearing suits, and it means that it's uncomfortable for a woman who's wearing a blouse and a skirt. And it's something that you probably would not think of unless your mom came back and told you how uncomfortable it made her and how she would catch a cold as a result of it. And there were other experiences too, but it helped me just dial in, I think, to some of the very subtle nuances that if you want to build a diverse team, you have to have an open mind to and be aware of, or these things will impact your ability to build a diverse team and to retain a diverse team if you're not dialed into them. And as a Patriots fan and a Bill Belichick fan, the little things become the small things. Attention to detail can end up making a big difference.
That's great. I didn't hear any booing, so that's good.
They're still being polite. I'm sure there are a few boos out there waiting for us.
That's great. So Amy, when you came from Staples, I know that you had a big network of women who would get on a regular conversation about just how to get certain things done. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about that and the detail that they wanted to hear.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we had done, I was looking at my own leadership team and recognized that while at the associate level we had 50-50 male-female, it significantly declined, worse than even some of the stats that you see out there. So when it went up to the frontline sales manager level, it was about 30% women, then 20, then even smaller on the way up. And I was one of very few female VPs in the sales organization. So we started having some conversations to just figure out why people weren't raising their hand, why they weren't applying for positions, and found that one of the best ways to foster this dialogue, and this is one of my recommendations on our 18 list of recommendations, is form groups. It could be as big or as small as you want. We were all virtual, so we had about 25, 30 people on the group. Lori actually was a guest speaker for us, and it was folks at all levels, so associates, managers, directors. So you had quite a range of access to ideas and situations and just a lot of different questions. So I had questions for the associates, they had questions for me. Really open, candid, honest dialogue, and it could be from things around, who in your household picks up the dry cleaning and does the cooking, to specific things like what's it like to work for this particular leader, the person who I reported into. So it was interesting, but we had support from the very senior levels of the organization. So our first guest speaker is the woman who is now the CEO of Staples. So it was an interesting way to start going about it and to really bring some legitimacy. But I would highly recommend starting dialogue, trying to figure out why people aren't raising their hands. Since we started that group a couple of years ago, several people have been promoted, and many more of the women in the group, and the group has expanded, have applied for leadership positions.
So it's a form of mentoring.
Yeah, but in a more casual,
peer.
Yep, and much more. We made once a quarter or once every other month. So from a mentoring perspective, I wasn't mentoring 25 or 30 people,
right,
but I was having some conversation with them, and there were always guest speakers. So you had a way to bring somebody else in to do some of the legwork and to just bring some new ideas.
Great. So before I ask Yvonne, I want to take some questions. Usually people have a number of questions. How many of you in the audience are a leader? Sales leaders? How many are sales reps? Any reps in the room? How about other? No, be whatever you want. Okay, so we have a lot of leaders in the room, so this is great. It's a good time to think of questions that you might have as a sales leader. Yvonne, I know we were talking about the idea of debunking the myth of what a salesperson really is. You want to share a little bit about that?
So traditionally, when you advertise for sales roles, and it was interesting when Lori started having the conversation with the three of us, looking at job descriptions, and when we're hiring for salespeople, what do the job descriptions usually look like for a salesperson? And we use words like aggressive, okay? That's normally not a word that endears itself to many cultures or to the female gender. Now, when I think about debunking it, we have to start using words like collaboration, teamwork. And if you've listened to any of the panels that took place this morning, we live in a global workplace. And our customers are expecting us to act globally. In order to be successful in this global workplace, you have to collaborate. And you have to form a team, and your network is not just the sales department, but it's the operations, it's the supply chain, it's the delivery people, it's the customer service people. So collaboration is a critical word. And I was reading some research just recently. Companies with collaboration programs in sales, guess what? 76% of their salespeople hit their quota. Versus informal collaboration, you only have 55% of your people hitting quota. So to me, it's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I actually put in people's MBO programs and their programs, and I want to constantly see that they're being collaborative in everything they do.
Great. And I wanted to mention that there's a new data set that's going to be shared today by Discover.org. You familiar with Discover.org? Yeah, they had done a study about CEOs, about men and women. I don't know if anybody saw that, but I asked them if they would also do it about sales leadership and salespeople, which they did. It was great. Never hurts to ask. They looked at 31,000 sales team members. And in their data set, overall was 23% women, 77% men. Now these are part of their customer base and people they sell to. What was sad though is, 30% are individual contributors, sales reps. It goes down to 26% middle managers. Top leadership is, anyone guess? 12%. So that's below standard business leadership for women in business. So we need more women in sales leadership. So I wanted to share that. And thanks to Discover.org, you'll also go to their website, you'll be able to download that study, which I think is great. Shep, you told me last year, we've talked many times about this, but I had mentioned a CEO who said that he just couldn't find women for a sales team. And you said that he's not trying hard enough, which I thought was great. Can you talk about where you find candidates that aren't Sully and that play ice hockey?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of buddies named Sully who are going to come after me after this presentation, by the way. So, it's not just that the CEO wasn't working hard enough at it. You really have to make it something that you're passionate about and something that you do consistently. And I'll use myself as an example because usually if there's a mistake out there, I've made it. After last year's panel, speaking on last year's panel, I was feeling pretty good about that I built at GuideSpark and about GuideSpark in general. To give you some numbers, about 30% of our sales team is female. We have at the director level across the company 50% female. But at the executive staff level, we do suffer, and we have one female executive staff, so there's room to improve. But I felt pretty good about the company in general and about the team, and I noticed that a couple of my employees were in the audience, and so I walked up to them after the panel and said, "How'd I do?" And they were like, "Well, with the presentation or, in general with diversity?" And I said, "In general with diversity." And one woman looked at me and she said, "You got a lot of work to do." And my balloon sort of went, but it was true. There are things that we need and that we're putting in place, like mentoring programs. So you really have to challenge yourself constantly to A, be on the lookout for talent, B, be on the lookout for things in your organization, whether it's the temperature that I mentioned earlier, the job descriptions that are attracting people to the organization, or the frat boy atmosphere, right? It's really easy to slip into a frat boy locker room atmosphere in a sales pit, and you have to be on guard against that, or else people will walk in when they come to interview and they will say, "This is not the right place for me. It doesn't feel right." So it may not just be that about getting out and beating the bushes in the right places. It's about what does that culture feel like when you walk in, and is it welcoming to people of different ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, et cetera. And if it's not, you better fix it, or you will not be able to attract that great talent when they do come through the door. Right, because they'll interview and then they'll go somewhere else, typically. If they can't see themselves working in a role and in leadership, a lot of companies lose people at that point, for sure. Who has the first question? Yes, go right to the microphone, right to your, there you go.
Hi, I'm feeling brave today. Okay, so I have a 100% female sales team, so I have
100% female, wow.
Yeah, woo, I know, girl power. But
what industry, may I ask?
Insurance.
Insurance,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so
interesting.
Where I am on the other side is I've been trying very hard this year to add a couple gentlemen to our team, and we can't quite find the right candidates. So, you know, I've got these words of maybe words not to use to attract females, but any
great.
recommendations?
Well,
on
I
the other
just, I just
side?
want to say one thing, which is the best sales teams have a combination of men and women. So it goes either way. So you definitely want to get some men on your team, and it's going to be good for your bottom line.
You gotta defer this one to me. I was going to say, what's the name of your company? Because I might want to come recruit some of your people, especially the talented ones.
Now I'm not going to tell you.
I can send you plenty of dudes. So that's a great question. That, you know, one thing that I guess a question back to you is, are you having trouble getting people in the door to interview, or do you lose them once they come in and interview?
It's really been, so our sales team's only 2 years old for an organization that's 85 years old. And so we're definitely new in our approach. And it's really been more of kind of recruiting people that we knew in our networks kind of thing. And we brought them in just to kind of get us going and get us on the map. So we haven't been too strategic of, you know, what's that next level of our recruiting efforts.
Yeah, I think so. So here's a thought. I think it's a really complex, and it's one that I'm happy to spend some time with you after the session on. But one thought is there's a great article in the Harvard Business Review last month about diversity, actually 3 or 4 articles. And one of the things that they pointed out was that you can't rely on self-assessments when assessing a sales team, because generally speaking, men will thump their chest and say how wonderful they are, and women will be more self-effacing and more critical of themselves. And so one thought would be that if you're trying to attract men and you have a great team and you have a proud company that's 85 years old, you might want to think about being a little more self-promoting or braggadocious than you normally would be. Because that might actually attract
It's like the inverse. Yeah, it's like the inverse of the situation. So let's get another question too. Who has go up? Yes, come on up to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Hi there. I work for a really small company, and my team is 4 people, including myself. So it becomes very hard to create a diverse environment when if 2 are, you suddenly have a similar group of people. Are there ways that we can compensate for a small group but still get a diverse range of thought and idea sharing?
When do you want to take it?
I'll go first and I'll give it to Amy. So back when I started my career, I started in a very small company. The way that I balanced that is I actually looked for professional organizations, whether they were the California Business and Professional Women's Association, local chapters. There's always been, back in the 80s, you know, working mothers, we had groups, and you need to find that network. So create a network outside of work. So don't totally depend on your employer or your work environment, but seek, you know, professional organizations.
And I would have said something very similar as well, which is something like the AAISP, if you're an inside sales team. And another thing is just finding other networks within the organization, not necessarily sales. So having come from a couple of different disciplines before moving into sales and sales management, I can tell you that some of the best partnerships and collaborations come out of getting to know other folks in other parts of the organization, which might just be a way to make a really small group feel a little bit more connected to the larger whole and get some different perspectives.
Right, good. ISP too, it's a great organization. Yes.
Agreed, also a member of AAISP, so plug there as well. To kind of piggyback on that last question, do you have any thoughts, metrics, or maybe processes for promoting not just diversity of gender or race, but diversity of so you know, being able to you know, bring different types of people together to sort of fill out sales teams or really any team?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that McKinsey has done some great research. There is some other, McKinsey did some research with leanin.org, and it was in the Wall Street Journal last week, quite a number of articles, so great facts there. There's also the groupthink whole conversation that we probably don't have time to get into today, but that diverse opinions yield better results.
Well, and Tim Sanders this morning talked about the power of 4. And it's interesting, I started thinking about when we're doing deals, my strategic account executives, I always force them to bring supply chain, to bring operations, and bring delivery into the picture, right? Because they're looking at the deal from a different color lens. So it's very nice to have the different point of views, the different disciplines, and Tim talked about the power of four is like the maximum, because over that you get diminishing returns. And I can actually say that when we have 4 or 5 people strategizing on a deal, we're much more successful, get the, to the end game faster.
Shep.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that of the magic moment in that presentation, I absolutely took a picture of that bar chart going all the way up to 4, because I think that the results show that when you get 4 people working on something, it will deliver. In my mind, that absolutely would bring diversity of thought, because it's a challenge, right, to see if you can do it.
Yeah, so your question is an awesome one, and it's something I feel really passionate about, and that diversity is much bigger than just, skin color or religion or sexual orientation. It really insane. And you have to, when you can create a diverse sales team, this is where the secret weapon piece comes in. So the secret weapon is that you have a diverse set of opinions and perspectives to solve a problem. And after all, sales is problem solving. How do I get this person who won't respond to me to respond to me? How do I get this deal that's been sitting on the goal line and been promising to my manager for the past 3 quarters actually over the goal line? And when you have a bunch of guys who played college lacrosse in an Ivy League school, you're going to have one perspective. And when you have a rich fabric, it's like enriching the gene pool, you're going to have a bunch of different perspectives. So the advice I would give you is don't fall into the trap of saying, oh, we hire college athletes or we hire lacrosse players from Princeton, because you're going to end up with one set of opinions.
Thank you for sharing that. College athlete as a son, and he couldn't sell. Just because you're an athlete, it doesn't mean that you can sell. It means if you, thank you, there's applause in the back. But there's a myth going, that's one of the myths of sales, that you need to hire athletes. Any last questions? I thought we had one more. Yes?
I know you're up on time.
Quick.
Well, it's not very quick, that's the problem.
Oh, okay.
I think the challenge is, I have views from hundreds of students who go to organizations who claim a culture of diversity, but they haven't quite. So a lot of the students will come back and say, yeah, there's no diversity there.
Yeah.
Even though the strategy is diversity. What advice would you give the leaders that's one of the challenges? New people are coming in, don't see the diversity, even though you have a strategy of diversity.
Right, and I want to say we are on the clock and we are done with time. This is what we need to carry the conversation forward. It's a person at a time. It's a conversation at a time. This is recorded. Hopefully lots of people will see it online. And we make change one person at a time, one interaction at a time. Thank you very much to the panel. How about a big round of applause?